We uncover some of the secrets of the region now with Richard Wyatt and Polly Lloyd.
Welcome to Wedmore, which lies between the River Axe and the River Brew, looking out over the Somerset levels. Its history dates back to the Iron Age. The Romans were here, and it once belonged to the Saxon kings of Wessex.
Yes, one of them, Alfred the Great, made peace with the Danes here, and that heralded in 12 days of festivities and ceremony. Well, today, Wedmore is still a lively place. There's something like 1,000 people living in the village and another 3,000 in outlying hamlets and farms. Stay with us over the next half hour as we delve into Wedmore's past, present and future. Enjoying the fruits of their labour, the traditional harvest home. Wired to the future, putting the web into Wedmore, and making music in a marquee, the village opera company tuning up for its next performance.
Well, this street is known as the Borough, an historic street in an historic village and full of interesting houses and shops. In fact, people have been coming here to do their shopping for hundreds of years, because once upon a time this would have been much wider and home to the village market. Isn't that right, Hazel?
That's right. It was 3 times wider than it is today. The old line is back there and back there. And it wasn't until the 1800s when people began to pinch bits for their gardens and build shops and other things in the market.
So how far back does the market date?
The market dates from 1255, when we were granted a charter to run a Tuesday market and a 3-day fair in July. And then later on we had another fair in September. And it was obviously up and thriving until about the 1800s, but the fair continued until the First World War.
Now you've got a group of people called the Reeves, which seem to me to be a little bit like a kind of council. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, the market was run by the borough court, and the borough court was set up by all the people who lived in the borough, which was about 40 houses in this area, which was developed about the 1200s. And out of those people, out of the householders, you had to choose your borough court officials. And the important one was the port reeve. There was a bailiff to help in it as well, but the port reeve was chosen first of the officials because it was the most unpopular job.
Why unpopular?
He was in charge of all the other people, and he had to make sure they all did their job properly at the fair and at the markets every week to make sure the bread weighers weren't selling underweight bread and they weren't adulterating the beer. And we still have our 2 port reeves now. So when we have a fair, the port reeves are here dressed up in their finery, carrying their staves, and they visit all the stalls. They're supposed to collect money from them like they would have done through the medieval period. And we also have them officiating at Wedmore Harvest Home, where they taste the beer and pronounce it good. And they turn up, we hope, yes.
Back in 1959, an academic from Bristol University set the cat amongst the pigeons by suggesting that farmers were a pretty insular lot who made little contribution to village life. HTV sent their reporter John Wynne-Jones down to Wedmore to seek a reaction to that, and he spoke to a local farmer called Ernest Banwell.
Well, I think that's all bunkum. As a matter of fact, you'll find farmers on every committee almost in the parish, in the village. Right down from the St. John's ambulance down to the church, you'll find them on the body of sidesmen. You'll find them members of the parochial church council. You'll find farmers actively connected with the cricket and football and rifle clubs. Well, in fact, everything that's going on in the village, you'll find some farmers taking a really active part.
Well, that was all 40 years ago, the wonderful world of black and white. Let me introduce you now to Ernest's son, Alan. Alan, is there as much going on in the village as there was in your dad's time?
I think there's probably more going on in the village than there was in Dad's time. There are things like the theatre club and amateur dramatics and things like that that are probably added to the list of things that he could think of.
You name it, we've got it. There must be lots of memories for you when you come out in your daily stroll to look around the farm.
Right,
But
yeah.
this building behind us has a bit of significance, doesn't it? This was your dad's headquarters, or the headquarters of the Home Guard during the war?
That's right. When Father was in charge of the Home Guard, the house became a bit congested with land girls and all sorts, and he had his office in the dining room. Decided it wasn't suitable, and they presented him with a hut, which was put there during the war and is still there now.
Was he a bit of a Captain Mannering?
Oh yes, he was. Yes, he was. Yes, he led the Home Guard right from the very beginning when the LDV started, and he knew everybody, he liked everybody, and he had the greatest of fun out of it, the same as Captain Mannering did, I'm sure.
Did you know that a hoard of Saxon coins was found in the corner of St Mary's churchyard in 1853? It is thought that the coins had lain there for nearly 1,000 years. Most of the coins are now in the British Museum. The man who found them, whose name was Tucker Coles, used his reward money to sail to America. Unfortunately, he was killed during the Civil War.
Well, we'll learn more about St Mary's Church a little bit later on in the programme, but right now we've come to meet the vicar. Now, Wedmore's vicar is someone who was involved with the biggest change in the Church of England history since the Reformation, and she's somebody who can speak about it from first-hand experience because she was one of the first women to be ordained as a priest. Now, the ordination of women, Liz, caused a great deal of soul-searching, not just within the church, but the wider church.
Yes, we were all involved in the debate for at least 5 years, up until the time of the actual decision in 1992 to ordain us as priests.
It must have been, for women like you, literally the answer to your prayers.
It was, yes. Some women I know and was ordained with had been serving the church as parish workers for 30 years and were ordained in their 60s and 70s. It was very moving, I felt.
Now, we know that some women priests have had quite a tough time. There was a report out just a few weeks ago explaining that. What's been your experience?
We've been, as I say, very lucky in this diocese. The bishops and archdeacons have supported us all the way along, and I've been on the bishop's staff helping women to find the right appointments.
And what about the reaction from the congregation?
Well, when I came here to Wedmore, because of course there were no role models or experience of any woman in ministry in any capacity on the Isle of Wedmore, and so there was a lot of wariness and suspicion, and a very small number of people, you could count on the fingers of one hand, moved to worship elsewhere. But I think we've all built up confidence together and we trust each other, and things are moving forward now, I'm glad to say.
And what's your style of ministry? I see you're having a new platform put in the front of the church, which is a bit of a clue, really, isn't it?
That's right. Well, one thing to say is that we felt for the millennium that we wanted to build up the links between community and the church and bring people in here for all sorts of activities, many musical. And we've got a good programme of events all through the year, and that platform helps to enable lovely concerts and choirs and rock communions and things like that to happen, that everybody can see. It's a big church.
And you like to see it used and busy.
That's right, yes.
We were talking earlier about the many groups and organisations in Wedmore. Now, while many of them are traditional, Wedmore's not the sort of place to rest on its laurels. It's determined to get to grips with the World Wide Web. Even the terrified, it seems, are turning to IT. That's information technology, of course. And Angela, you're determined to help them. Why?
Because I feel that there's too much technology and not enough about people around. So here in Wedmore, we've put the people at the top, and we're trying to make them less terrified of inanimate objects whose are far slower than their brains.
Now, look, this would be impressive in a big city, but in a village with respect, like Wedmore?
Well, I mean, Wedmore was the first to have gas, Wedmore was the first to have electricity, so why shouldn't we be the first on something like this, besides which they're enjoying it?
So take away the terror. You can help people write letters, help them get a job, maybe? What other sort of applications are there?
We can help them fill up recipe sheets. We can also help them. Most of all, one lady came in last week, and I think this typified it. She had some friends from America. She's a grandmother. The American friends had a grandchild. They had the email address. They got on to America. They sent a picture back of the newborn baby, and they took that up to the great-grandmother in Yorkshire, who was 102. So it's a tangible impact in people's lives. I think that's what we're out to do.
And it's not a gimmick anymore, Angela, is it? I mean, it's here to stay. It's here to be used.
Well, a lot of people come in. The marketing has started, the campaigns are on, and it is going to impact everybody's life sooner rather than later. So that's why we thought we'd start IT for the Terrified.
Are you a bit of a missionary, do you think, around these parts?
I'm a crusader, missionary and lunatic, in whichever order you choose to take it.
Actually, you're doing a great job. I'm sorry we haven't got time to talk to all the ladies here individually.
They haven't got time to talk to you either, they're busy.
Ladies, is
it
it working? Are you enjoying it?
Yes!
I think they like it here.
Did you know this old farmhouse called Porch House was once home to the village doctor? His name was Dr. John Westover, and he was born in 1643. He was a man ahead of his time, and in 1680 he built a small hospital next door to care for mentally ill patients with kindness and dignity.
Back on the farm now to meet another member of the Banwell family, Alan's brother Clive. And Clive, I want to ask you about a very important date in the Wedmore social calendar, the Harvest Home. What's the origins of that?
Well, I think the Harvest Home has started off about back in the 30s. Originally it was for the workers on the farm, where the farmers used to entertain their employees to lunch, and the farmers' wives used to go along and prepare the food in a marquee, and this is how the Harvest Home originally, started.
As a way of saying thank you after all that hard work.
It was a way of saying thank you to everybody. That's right. Well, get the harvest in during the year. And
so what happens?
well, now it starts. It's grown considerably now. They start off with bell ringing in the church in the morning, followed by a service. And then they go on and down into the village, and the borough is closed, and the procession is assembled and judged in the borough, and then it's winds its way back up round through the village.
This is like a carnival procession.
Oh, it is.
With everybody dressing up.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And after the procession, they have the lunch in the marquee, where about 500 or 600 people sit down. And then in the evening, they have sort of big bands and discos and try to sort of recoup some of their costs, which they've spent all day, which they've...
Sounds like a good excuse for a bit of a knees up to me.
Oh, very much so, yes.
One or two sore heads the next day?
Oh, I'm sure, yes.
But you wouldn't ever be speaking from personal
experience. No, of course not.
Well, we're going to take a short break, but don't go away, because we'll be back with the story of King Alfred the Great. But I've been told not to mention how he burnt the cakes.
And we'll also be eavesdropping on rehearsals for the village's very own opera. See you in a couple of minutes. Well, this is the view you get if you manage to make it up the steps of the church tower at St Mary's. Welcome back to Wedmore. Now, the bottom part of the tower is the oldest part of the church. It was built around about 1200. This top bit is a little bit later, but 1400, so still very ancient. There's been a clock on the tower for at least 3 centuries, because we know in 1701 Mr John Sweet was paid £1 for keeping the clock, and the weather vane was added in 1725. That cost the princely sum of £6.15, with an extra shilling for ale, presumably to celebrate.
Well, it's my turn this week to keep my feet firmly on the ground, but at least it gives me a chance of looking around this wonderful church of St Mary's. I tell you, it's a day's outing to do the place properly, but we'll just look at a few pointers here. Elizabeth, I've been told that St Mary's is regarded as the cathedral on the moors, and also comparisons with Wells Cathedral here.
Yes, well, it's a very ancient church, and you can see that from the big square central tower that it looks very like Wells Cathedral. And the Dean of Wells owned the manor for a long time and sent his stonemasons over to carve here, and we've done studies on the carvings and can see that there's the same sculptor's hands behind Wells' work and here.
A smaller job, but the same men.
That's right.
You have got some lovely things in here. There were a couple of brass plaques over there in your vestry that took my eye, especially the one about the man who appeared to have been buried in 2 places.
It's a good story, that, isn't it? He was the son of the manor when the first local lord moved in. He had 3 children with his wife, Agatha, and went off to fight for Queen Elizabeth against the Spanish in the Netherlands, where he was severely wounded, having captured 2 ensigns. And before he died, he left a 3-part will that his soul was to go to Jesus, his body to Flemish soil, and his heart to be sent back to his wife, Agatha, here in Wedmore.
That's a lovely story. Where, in fact, is his heart buried?
It's buried here in the chancel.
That's a lovely story. One final thing that I love very much is the stained glass window at the west end there of the nave.
And you've noticed King Alfred on it?
Yes.
Yes. He is, of course, the pivotal point of Wedmore's contribution to European history.
A couple of queens in the window, and in fact, the one I'm not used to seeing in a stained glass window, Elizabeth I is there, but Queen Victoria. In fact, it's a memorial to her, isn't it, the whole window?
I think it is. It was built for her Jubilee, I believe.
So the Victorians left their mark on this church too?
Yes.
And a beautiful one it is. Thanks for showing us a few things.
Did you know this shop was once the largest shop in rural Somerset and one of the earliest department stores, covering 3 floors? The building originally had a tower where customers could take tea with a view that stretched as far as Wells Cathedral on a clear day. It remained a department store until the 1960s.
Well, we've spoken a lot about the organisations in Wedmore, and of course one of the very important ones is the Young Farmers, and I think that's one of the oldest Young Farmers clubs in Somerset, isn't it, Clive?
Yes, it is. We like to think in Wedmore it's the oldest Young Farmers Club in Somerset, but there is a question mark over that one.
There are other villages that would dispute that.
Yeah, there are.
Is it purely a social thing?
Very much so. Young Farmers, I mean, you get out of Young Farmers what you put into the movement. And Wedmore being very much a stock-keeping club, they obviously do a lot of stock judging around at local agriculture shows and show a lot of cattle around at different agriculture shows as well.
We've got some lovely old photographs of something called calf distribution. Now, what's all that about?
In the early days, there was a farmer from Drakehead who used to purchase the calves for Wedmore Young Farmers show and bring them here, and they would draw lots for each particular animal.
And the idea is to see who can bring on the best beast, I suppose.
Oh, very much so, yes.
Is where the rivalry comes into it.
That's true, yes, that's right, yes, correct.
Do you have to be young and a farmer to be a young farmer?
No. I would say now the larger percentage of members in the county federation and also any Wedmore Young Farmers, the larger percentage now come from non-farming backgrounds, which is quite encouraging, really.
So an important part of village life.
Yeah, very much so. Yes.
Well, if we were coming to you from Glastonbury, we'd be talking King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table. But this is Wedmore, and Wedmore is Alfred country. Alfred the Great, possibly the greatest of all English kings. Well, here's a lady who certainly thinks so. Hazel, what was so special about Alfred?
Well, Alfred, he owned Wedmore. This was his estate. And after he beat the Danes at Ethandune, Eddington, he brought Guthrum eventually here to Wedmore, to his royal estate, to entertain him for 12 days.
So this is the leader of the Danes, so rather than kill him, because he defeated him...
That's right. I think it was to show that Alfred was a Christian. And then there was also making the Peace of Wedmore, which was not a written treaty at that time. It was probably just a swearing ceremony between the two great leaders. And then Guthrum and the Danes had to push off over that side of England. And Alfred could consolidate Wessex and make it a real kingdom. At the beginning, some people say, of England. The Peace of Wedmore was the beginning of England as a nation.
Wedmore celebrated the 1100th anniversary of that peace in many ways, including a play cycle in the church. But isn't Alfred also famous for burning the cakes?
Well, so you tell me.
You don't agree with Alfred burning
I don't agree with
the
Alfred
cakes?
burning any cakes. It's supposed to be a story that was written 200 years at least after his death, or round about then, just to sort of glorify him, make him feel, you know, what a poor, sad thing he was, sitting down in the levels there.
All these sort of stories come from somewhere.
Oh, well, people invent them to make, you know, whatever. But no, we don't have any association with Alfred burning cakes in Wedmore.
A thatched cottage in Sand Road, typical of picturesque Wedmore, complete with babbling brook. Angela Holmwood of Taunton tells us that her grandmother Fanny Wilkins used to live in the cottage. Here she is enjoying a glass of cider. Apparently in 1968 the stream burst its banks, washing away the road and causing a great deal of damage to the cottage. This is Sand Lane in the 50s, with Angela on the right, together with her friend Margaret Redman.
Well, this is Wedmore Village Hall, and as you can see, the stage is set for a production of Death on the Nile by the local Amateur Dramatic Society. But in fact, that's not why we're here, because they're a very talented bunch in this village, and every other year they stage a full-scale opera. This year, it's been specially written. It's an opera called Jago. Mary Lynn, it all sounds very ambitious. How did it start?
Well, it sort of came about through a conversation one New Year's Day when we were all, well, actually feeling fairly hungover and thinking, how can we get rid of these feelings of doom? So we thought, I know, we'll put on an opera. And that's what we did.
And you started here in this village hall,
yes.
didn't you?
Yes, in 1988 we put on a production of La Traviata for 2 nights, which went very well, surprisingly well, and it just grew from there.
It grew so much, in fact, that you couldn't fit all your audience in the hall and you moved to a marquee.
Yes, that's true. We wanted to be able to fit in more people so that the economics worked out better, because we've obviously got a big orchestra. And we decided when we were going to do Carmen that that was the right moment to go a lot bigger.
And tell me about this year's opera, Jago. Brand new opera.
It's a brand new opera which we commissioned from Mike Westbrook and his wife Kate, who wrote the libretto. It came about because we noticed that there was Millennium Lottery money going spare, so we thought it was quite a good way of trying to get some of that money, was to commission a new opera for a community to do. It takes place in a community in the southwest, a rural community, and it's set in a village hall. But it's not actually Wedmore, it just might be Wedmore. And a black GI who was stationed nearby returns to the place where he was. And from his arrival develops an enormous amount of change, and extraordinary things happen in the community.
Sounds wonderful.
It is. It's absolutely wonderful music. It's challenging but extremely accessible, as you've heard as well. You know, it's a wonderful mixture.
So the people of Wedmore can look forward to a world premiere.
Indeed, on Wednesday the 12th of July.
Competition time now, and your chance of winning a £15 book token. If that is, you can correctly identify this place. It's somewhere we visited already during the Look Back 2000 series. If you know the answer, send it along with your name and address to the Look Back 2000 competition here at HTV in Bristol. BS4 3HG.
And congratulations to Mrs M. Follen of Lower Swainswick in Bath. First out of the hat with the right answer to last week's mystery place. Tricky one, this one. It's the river at Chepstow.
Well, it's time for us to say goodbye to Wedmore now. Many thanks to everyone we've met today. We're looking ahead to Radstock and Dunster, so if you've got any old photos or any old film, we'd love to hear from you. Give our man Morris a ring in the office.
Yes, his telephone number and our email address are on your screens now. No look back over the next fortnight. We're taking a break for the Easter Monday holiday and the May Day holiday, but we'll be back on May the 8th with a special from Templemead Station in Bristol. See you then.
Bye-bye.